The definition of annihilation is complete destruction or obliteration. And annihilation occurred last night in Columbus, in the Horseshoe, in Ohio Stadium. But it wasn't Tennessee doing the annihilation. It was Ohio State. Tennessee football's time of death was Saturday, December 21st at 9 p.m. The 2024 season for the Tennessee Volunteers is over. That's what happens when your opponent averages more points per drive than you average yards per pass attempt. That's what happens when your trench advantage is really a complete facade. And on top of the fact that you barely held your own water in the trenches, you got carpet bombed from every which way by Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, even G. Scott Jr. and TreVeyon Henderson were involved in the pass attack for Ohio State. And on the other side, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Tyleik Williams, Ty Hamilton, and Cody Simon were giving Nico Imaliava a cold, bitter taste of hell in Columbus, Ohio. It was cold, it was loud, it was rambunctious, it was the nighttime environment that we have deserved as college football fans from Columbus, Ohio, from Ohio State football, that big noon kickoff has robbed us of. And we're going to talk about this game here on College Football with Sam. But before we dive into the specifics, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, I know many of you watch this show who probably aren't subscribed but think you are, but just to make sure, subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when we go live during the week, and also when we go live for the quarterfinal games on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. For Penn State versus Boise State, the Fiesta Bowl, Texas versus Arizona State in the Peach Bowl, Notre Dame versus Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and Oregon versus Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. We will be doing live play-by-play and color commentary for those games. So hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when we're live for those, when we're live on our normal show, or just so that you can get notified when we release new content here on College Football with Sam. We need your help to become the best college football channel on YouTube, and I appreciate the support that you've already given us by liking the video, subscribing, hitting the bell. Watch the video all the way through, and also comment your thoughts down below. And last but not least, join our Discord server, the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. And if you want to support the channel monetarily, the Patreon page and merchandise server links are also in the description and the pinned comment. But let's get into this now. And if I told you before this matchup, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that Ohio State had more points per drive at 3.8 than Tennessee had yards per attempt at 3.4, well, you just know the game's done. Game's over. And you know that it probably ends pretty early, or what happens is it's a close game and then Tennessee snaps. And the straw, whether that is a touchdown on a fourth down or a long, maybe rushing touchdown, something just uncharacteristic happens and it breaks Tennessee, and then Ohio State runs away from it. That at the end of the day, the scoring margin is going to be wide in favor of the Buckeyes. And that's what happened. And it happened rather early. Let me read to you the drive chart for these teams' first three drives. Ohio State, touchdown, first drive of the game, 5 plays, 75 yards, 2 minutes, 14 seconds. Will Howard pass complete to Emeka Egbuka for 8. Will Howard pass incomplete. Timeout Ohio State. Tennessee penalty face mask after sacking Will Howard gives Ohio State the first down at their own 48. Judkins loss of 1. Ohio State penalty false start. 2nd and 16. Will Howard pass complete to TreVeyon Henderson for 21 to the Tennessee 37. Will Howard pass complete to Jeremiah Smith for 37 yards for a touchdown. Tennessee, Nico run for 3. Another Dylan Sampson run for 3. Nico rush for 1. Punt. 7-0 OSU. Ohio State, next drive, 5 plays, 68 yards, 2 minutes, 39 seconds. They weren't just scoring and embarrassing Tennessee in doing so. They were doing so quickly. Up-tempo, disciplined, passionate, surgical. 1st and 10 at the Ohio State 32. Will Howard pass complete to Jeremiah Smith for 18 yards for the 50 for a first down. TreVeyon Henderson run for 4 yards for the Tennessee 46. Will Howard pass complete to Egbuka for 40 yards to the Tennessee 6 for a first down. Quinshon Judkins run for 5 yards to the Tennessee 1. and then Quinshon Judkins run for 1 yard for a touchdown. Ohio State 14, Tennessee, nothing. Then Tennessee, Deshaun Bishop run for a loss of 1. Nico Imaliava sacked by JT Tuimoloau for a loss of 12. Nico Imaliava pass incomplete. It's 4th and 23. Delay of game makes it 4th and 28, and they punt. Next Ohio State drive makes it 21-0. Will Howard throws an incomplete pass. He then passes it to TreVeyon Henderson for a gain of 10. Henderson runs for a loss of 1. Jeremiah Smith has a reception for a gain of 6. Egbuka with a 16-yard reception from Howard. Howard passes to G. Scott Jr. for a loss of 2 to the Tennessee 29. And then TreVeyon Henderson with his acrobatics, with his Houdini-like ability, runs for a 29-yard rushing touchdown that exploded the game even more. And then Tennessee punted again, and then Ohio State went down the field again, nearly scored, but a tipped pass was intercepted, and that prevented it from being 28-0. So that was really the pace of the game right there. It was over in the first quarter. Pass protection for Tennessee was suspect. They had no trench advantage. Jeremiah Smith was constantly getting behind Jermon McCoy, Andre Turrentine, anyone in the secondary of Tennessee. Ohio State was aggressive. They were pumping their fist and they were throwing punches, and Tennessee was just kind of hiding and crunching over and being conservative, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Tennessee played right into Ohio State's hands, and Ohio State did everything they could to win this football game. Tim Banks and Josh Heupel were worked. When you look at the opening series, the fact that Tennessee was, running as much as they were, especially with Nico early, you could tell they didn't trust their receivers, but not only that, it was a very conservative game plan, and they weren't being aggressive. And then defensively, I don't know what Tim Banks was doing, thinking that only sending 3 or 4 guys forward was going to be enough to get to Ohio State. We've talked about this before in my preview for this game, and also a video talking about why Ohio State will win, is that the narrative entering this game for the past 2 weeks was that Tennessee's O-line is better than Ohio State's O-line, and that their D-line is better than Ohio State's D-line. Well, that's not necessarily true. Tennessee's interior O-line is better than Ohio State's interior O-line, but Ohio State's tackles are more productive, and Ohio State's defensive line is way deeper than Tennessee's. Their defensive ends, outside of maybe Sawyer, are not the caliber of James Pierce Jr., but they have a larger quantity of players who are great or better at the Power 4 level, while Tennessee maybe has 1 or maybe 2 or 3. Ohio State's deeper on the D-line, and after yesterday, I would say they're just straight up better on the D-line than Tennessee is. And Ohio State's offensive line is pretty serviceable, and I'd say maybe good at times in pass protection. That narrative was blown up, that Tennessee had a trench advantage. Ohio State actually won the trenches, and they dominated through the air. Tennessee allowed 0.656 points per play, 7.4 yards per play. Jeremiah Smith had over 100 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Will Howard averaged over 10.4 yards per pass attempt. Ohio State, until garbage time, was averaging more than 5 yards per carry. Tennessee only gained 0.23 points per play. A lot of that came in garbage time, and they only averaged 3.5 yards per play. By the way, they finished, Tennessee did, with more rushing yards than passing yards. That is just not just a showing of who Tennessee is at heart. They're successful at running the ball because they run it a lot. They're not necessarily elite at running the ball, but also their passing offense is broken, and their coaching staff didn't do anything to fix the issues that they had. And as we talked about a few seconds ago, this plays, of course, into coaching, but also just the players that Tennessee has. Their trench advantage was overrated. It was even more overrated than I predicted, though, because Tennessee didn't get any sacks. They did earn 7 tackles for loss. Ohio State, though, earned 6 TFLs, and they had 4 sacks, and they were destroying Tennessee's offensive tackles. When Ohio State can get pressure on you without having to blitz, that's when you're in trouble. And at that point, you basically have to rely exclusively on your defense to put together an amazing game. And probably you also have to rely on Ohio State's coaching staff to not call the best game for you to win. Because Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun, by the way, didn't have a single holding penalty, and made an interception that was called back due to, I think, a questionable roughing the passer call. So good on him. But even with some of the weaknesses at corner for Ohio State, the safety room is one of the best in the nation. The corners are capable of playing good, and I think they are good. They're just not great or elite on an average basis. The linebackers are elite, and the D-line is near elite. Yesterday they were elite, last night. So when, again, Ohio State can get pressure on you with only 4, that's a disaster. And Tennessee entered this game 91st in sack percentage. They are probably outside the top 100 after yesterday. I haven't checked for sure, but that may have been the worst offensive tackle unit Ohio State has played since their Group of 5 non-conference games. I mean, seriously, Tennessee's offensive tackles have been that bad for much of the season. And on top of that, when you look on defense, Ohio State was able to have one of their better rushing games in quite some time against Tennessee. And they also held the Volunteers to no sacks. So take from that what it's worth. My opinion on Ohio State after this game has changed a little bit, but actually not that much, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes because I've not been high on Tennessee, but it was a very impressive performance by OSU. We were live for that game doing color commentary, play-by-play. I was active with the chat answering questions. It was a really fun experience, and it was just such a stark contrast, such a juxtaposition of two staffs and two teams that played and coached totally differently and was right into the Buckeyes' hands. If this game, by the way, was in Neyland Stadium's emptying out in the fourth quarter. Like, yes, home field advantage matters a lot, but Ohio State is that much better of a team than Tennessee. And the game plan that they executed was that much better than what Tennessee's did. It would have looked, if this was played in Neyland Stadium, it would have looked like the Packers versus Cowboys playoff game from a few years ago, where Green Bay just came into Dallas and was up 27-0 at one point and just murdering Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. That's what that would have looked like if it was in Neyland Stadium. So thankfully, if you're a Tennessee fan, you got blown out on the road. You didn't get humiliated at home like you would have been, because the Volunteers faced their toughest team all season, their toughest test, and they folded. The game was over within a quarter. It was done. I wrote this down on my notepad here, and I was taking notes while live doing color commentary, play-by-play, all this. Again, Tennessee was aggressive, or Ohio State was aggressive. Tennessee was being very conservative. Penalties killed Tennessee in critical moments. Their pass protection was bad. The receivers couldn't get open. I did not find a single impressive player for Tennessee last night from an individual standpoint consistently outside of Nico on the ground and maybe James Pierce Jr. and at times that interior O-line who was doing better in the second quarter than they were earlier in the game. But it was so bad for Tennessee. You had 2 weeks to prepare for a team of Georgia's caliber, because that's who Ohio State is. In fact, I would say after yesterday, they're better than Georgia. And then, what did you do? You folded up. You folded. You collapsed within 15 minutes. The game was over. Again, Tennessee football, 2024, time of death, 9 p.m. Eastern time, Saturday, December 21st of 2024. For the Buckeyes now, talking about them, I think it's pretty clear, hopefully it's pretty clear to everyone, that Ryan Day is a Michigan problem, not a top 10 problem. And that's why I rolled with Ohio State here in the preview and prediction that I made, is thinking that out of all the upsets that were going to potentially occur, I thought to myself that the only upset less likely to occur than this one, in my mind, was Clemson, Texas. And maybe SMU Penn State was less likely. I was unfortunately convinced that Indiana was going to beat Notre Dame. Incorrect about that. But I thought to myself that, James Franklin is James Franklin. He could do James Franklin things. He actually did against SMU, but Penn State still dominated. And also the fact that SMU is pretty underrated. And I like their quarterback and passing attack more than Tennessee's. I think their offense is better than Tennessee's. So I thought to myself that could be more likely. I did not think it was going to be a likely outcome for Tennessee to win this game. I didn't think that. And the game plan that Ohio State brought, the energy they brought, ensured that fact. They had 317 passing yards. They averaged 10.7 yards per attempt. They had 156 rushing yards for 4.7 yards per carry, 6 rushing touchdowns, or 6 total touchdowns overall. But a lot of them were rushing touchdowns for Buckeyes. And then this is jarring, 0.56 points per play. Every 2 plays Ohio State ran, every time they snapped the ball twice, including garbage time, they scored more than 1 point. That's bonkers. That's bizarre right there. And they averaged 7.4 yards per play. So 7.5 yards per pass attempt is the mark of competency. That's a competent passing attack. Ohio State averaged just 1/10 of a yard per play less than that for plays overall, including rushing the football. Again, that's bonkers. You don't usually see these statistics when a defense like Tennessee's plays Ohio State, and when Ohio State's defense, with the defense being the better side of their team, is also engaging with a team like Tennessee. Both of these defenses are better than both of these offenses here, and yet Ohio State's offense hummed, and I think there might be some truth to the fact that Tennessee's defense isn't as good as many thought they were. They're not as good as even I thought they were. I'm saying many, but that includes myself too, because I thought that the final score of this game was going to be, either 31-17. I changed it eventually to 27-10. I didn't think Ohio State was going to score 42 points here, and yet they did, and that is a credit to Chip Kelly, to Ryan Day, to Brian Hartline, even to Justin Fry, who I don't think his job should be safe even after this game, because look, this D-line for Tennessee is not elite, but still got to give credit where credit is due. His unit did play an all-right game there. And then, speaking of Justin Fry, when you look at the trenches, they overall did a great job. The D-line carried most of the water in the trenches, but the O-line did enough to where the offense was comfortable. The offense was never uncomfortable for Ohio State. They allowed 7 TFLs. The rushing attack was, a hiccup here, a hiccup there, but then a big run there, a moment of power and force the other way, and then the air attack was perfect. The pass protection for Ohio State, their pass blocking, is a strong contrast to their run blocking. I'll just leave it at that. Henderson made a lot of those rushing plays work, where if you put in Judkins, that play doesn't go for a 30-yard touchdown, or it doesn't go for a long run. But the trenches did a great job overall. I mean, they had 156 rushing yards, again, for 4.7 yards per carry. Had 4 rushing touchdowns, Ohio State did. And then their defense earned 4 sacks, 6 TFLs, and they allowed 7. Yes, but most importantly, they didn't allow a single sack. And the one time they did to Tennessee early, it was a face mask. So Tennessee negated the one time they were able to get to Howard. They negated that with a penalty. And that is something else about this game, too. Ohio State all year, outside of really that Michigan game and maybe the Nebraska game and the pick six and some other plays against Penn State, they don't really beat themselves all that much, especially with penalties. Meanwhile, Tennessee was outside the top 100 in penalty yards and penalties per game this season. And I also have to say this team is absolutely a top 4 team. And they can't just win it all, because they can, but they also should be one of the favorites to win it all. The Buckeyes should be, because their wide receivers, running backs, linebackers, and DBs, and also I'll say the defensive line too, but mostly those, negate weaknesses on the O-line or maybe overall in the trenches. This is one of the worst offensive lines in the playoffs remaining, especially with Tennessee being eliminated, and then, SMU, Clemson, Indiana. And I think that some of those offensive lines are even better than this Ohio State offensive line. However, few teams, if any, have the combination of backfield talent collectively on offense and defense that Ohio State does. There's Caleb Downs, there's Lathan Ransom, there's Jordan Hancock, you got Cody Simon, that's on defense. Some backfield players who I think are classified as elite. On offense, you have Jeremiah Smith, you have Emeka Egbuka, you have Carnell Tate, you have TreVeyon Henderson, and Judkins, I still think is a great running back here. And then, of course, Will Howard, who's top 3 in QBR. So this team can win it all. And I'm excited to talk about their game against Oregon, which is what's up next for the Buckeyes. They'll be playing in the Rose Bowl January 1st, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. local time. Oregon versus Ohio State, kind of classic Pac-12 Big Ten game, reimagined. A little bit of a blast to the past here. So I'm excited to see that and how that goes. Go Volunteers. Hopefully the preseason treats you well. And also go Buckeyes and continue that college football playoff run of yours. And I will be wishing you well in the Rose Bowl against the Oregon Ducks, which should be an elite game. So Ohio State, they're one of the best teams in the country. If they play the way they did against Tennessee, they absolutely can win it all and maybe even win it all in dominant fashion. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much, and also share the video around to others who you know enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do, and comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation, because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brascal Rascal, and Kylo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page, or super chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.